The Wanted Man, read by Helen Porter and written by Helen Porter. Chapter 3. Revelations. Liam sat down to breakfast as normal at 8 a.m. sharp. His father George was very strict about sitting down to meals at a proper time, and the young boy didn't want his father's wrath to be directed at him. His father didn't get angry very much, but from her first-hand experience, when he got angry, he got very angry. Liam was 10 years and 10 months old, and was very much looking forward to his birthday in 2 months' time. He wanted a new bike for when he turned 11, but to get it, he knew he had to make sure he didn't get into any trouble. George grunted "mornin'" at him while he started on his cereal. He wasn't much of a cereal person, but again, he knew that not eating it would bring on his father's angry side. He replied, "Morning, Dad," and turned back to his juice, eagerly drinking it down. "Did you do all your homework?" George asked out of the blue. "Yep," he replied, quickly wondering why he was getting an inquisition this morning. "Well then, I have a surprise for you," said George, waiting to see the expression on Liam's face when he told him. "We have visitors coming this afternoon after you come home from school. Uncle Sam is coming, and he's bringing a friend." Liam's face brightened immediately. He loved seeing his Uncle Sam, and any friend of Sam's was bound to be nice. Would it be okay if we played Xbox with Uncle Sam?" Liam asked hopefully. "Of course, son. Come on over here, give your old pop a hug." Liam hopped off his chair carefully and gave George a hug. "Thank you, thank you, thank you!" "That's okay, Liam. Now off you go and get ready." Jack and Sam got into the car, Jack into the driver's side, while Sam got into the passenger seat. Sam had insisted that he hear Jack's story from the last 10 years, and Jack had refused all morning before they figured out a deal. If Jack would tell the story, he would let Jack drive, knowing that Jack preferred driving than being a passenger. Jack was again wearing the same outfit from the night before, while Sam wore a simple t-shirt and a pair of blue jeans. They sat in silence, Sam patiently waiting for Jack to start, while Jack was wondering how to tell Sam in a way that didn't make things sound too crazy. Finally, after a couple of miles, Sam had had enough. "Well, are you going to tell me?" "Fine, fine. Well, I don't know how you guys caught me, and by the way, that is a story you'll be telling me later. Anyway, so you caught me, and put me into the back of that police van. Obviously, you know how I went through processing and everything, and then got put into a holding cell," started Jack. "Yeah, that's about as far as I know before you ended up on my doorstep yesterday," replied Sam. "Okay. Well, I was in the holding cell, when suddenly, in the middle of the night, they came for me. There were a lot of them in my cell that night. I don't know how they got past the policeman on duty, but somehow they did. There was no way I could have got away from them, and they were pressing down on my neck so hard I couldn't even make a noise. They put me into a van, and then knocked me out. When I woke up, I was in another holding cell, which was a lot worse than the police one. The first couple of days were a blur, as I had a head injury from where they had knocked me out. After that, every couple of days they took me out to another room to basically torture and weaken me. There was no other reason. They didn't ask any questions, and they didn't want anything from me. All the other cells were also filled near me, and I could just about tell that it was a prison of males. I never saw a single female the whole time I was there. There was one man. His name was Vine. He was the most sadistic of them all, and the man in charge. I think he works with the government, and is the one who set out looking for me, but I have no proof. This went on for around 4 years before anything changed. I started getting really angry at the guards, and at Vine, and at the world in general. Then Vine did something incredibly stupid, which he probably didn't realise was stupid at the time. He told me that Lara was actually alive. He tried to make out that she had faked her own death, and then went off with someone else, and left me and Liam to the consequences. I knew that she would never have done that. Even though we weren't together anymore, she wouldn't have just done something like that. I was also sceptical because I knew from you that she was dead. However, the more I thought about it, the more I realised it didn't feel right that she could be dead. I could feel that she was still alive. From there I deduced that he must have her, because I sure as hell knew she wouldn't run away. I kept getting more and more angry, until something weird happened. Jack wiped his face with his hand, keeping his eye on the road. "I think the next bit of the story needs coffee. You want to stop at the next service station?" "Sure," Sam said. The few miles before the service station passed away in more silence, while Sam digested what Jack had said so far, storing all his questions for later. Jack, meanwhile, was trying to work out how to tell Sam the next part of the story, without sounding too wacky. They parked the car and walked towards the service station building, each deep in thought. Jack was so deep in thought, he almost didn't see a woman swerve into his path. He stepped to the left quickly to avoid her. She just carried on past without a word. Jack turned round to watch her go. "What?" asked Sam. "I'm sure I recognise her. I just can't work out where," replied Jack, puzzled. They carried on walking into the shop, each picking up a strong coffee and a seat by the window. Jack started talking again. "Now, I need to warn you, what you're about to hear you aren't going to like, and it's going to be a shock to you, but here goes." Sam looked at him nervously, wondering what he was going to say. "So the more I got angry, the more I noticed that strange things were happening around me. First of all, it was little things like bars rattling, and soon it was bigger things like items being lifted off the ground. At first I just ignored it, thinking I was going crazy, being locked up for 4 years. Then I realised that if I concentrated enough, then I could control it. I spent a year learning to achieve these things without thinking and without getting angry. I was very careful not to show the guards or anyone else. I think that this is the reason why I know that Lara is still alive, and why I actually believe the guards and Vine. I think this is why they wanted Lara, because they somehow decided she had these kinds of powers. I also think that they don't think that the men can have these powers, and so have the people they are holding segregated, and all they do is weaken the men and test their partners, the women. So anyway, after a year, I felt that I had enough control. I was still very weak from low rations, and the treatment from the guards and Vine, but I knew I couldn't stay any longer. Even though I thought that Lara might be somewhere close by, I knew that I couldn't get both of us out at the same time. I was too weak. I had had enough time to memorize the guard patterns. As with any prison, there is a rotation that was very predictable if you know what to look for. The best time to leave was actually at midday, which I knew would be very risky when I got outside, but that was the point at which the guards were the weakest. I went to the door of my cell, and looking as far left and as right as I could to check no one was there, I opened the door as quietly as possible. It still gave off a really loud noise, which immediately notified the one guard at the one end of the corridor and the guard at the other end of the corridor. I immediately knocked them both down and ran as fast as I could, my powers unlocking all the doors and knocking over all the guards that were in my way. I felt bad I couldn't take anyone with me, but there was no way. I gained this, he said, pointing at the scar on his face, when one guard decided to try and use a knife to stop me, but thankfully it didn't work. Finally, Jack looked up, wincing to look at how his friend was taking the story. Sam's face looked calm, but inwardly he was struggling heavily to believe his friend. "Do you believe me, Sam?" asked Jack quietly. "Well, I believe that you believe that is what happened. I have no reason to doubt you, but I mean, it's kind of hard with all this powers stuff. I know that you were the last person to joke about something like that, but it's just hard, replied Sam with his head in his hands. "It's okay, Sam. I expected more of an outraged reaction from you, and I certainly didn't think that you would totally believe me," replied Jack. Sam looked relieved. They finished their coffees off and walked back out to the car, all the while checking to make sure they weren't being followed. Finally, an hour later, they arrived at Liam and Georgie's house. They knocked on the door. All the while, Jack was trying to contain his excitement and a little sadness. As soon as the door opened, Liam hugged Sam as tight as he could. "Hey, Uncle Sam," Liam said as they hugged. "Hi, little tyke," replied Sam affectionately. They let go of each other. "Liam, this is your Uncle Jack." Liam looked Jack up and down, taking in the scar and the clothes. Jack put his hand out to shake, and Liam took it timidly. "Hi, Uncle Jack," he said quietly. "Hi, Liam." By this time, George had also come to the door, and Sam and George exchanged friendly handshakes. When George came to Jack, however, he took him in his arms. "Long time no see, brother," George said. "Aye, it's been a long time," Jack replied. Jack, you never told me how you know George," Sam asked questioningly. "Oh, yeah. Well, he's my brother," replied Jack sheepishly. Liam looked on with wide eyes. "Really? He really is my uncle?" Liam asked George. George nodded back at him. "Yep, kiddo," replied Jack. Liam hugged Jack tightly. Liam then tugged on Jack's sleeve. "Can we play Xbox?" Liam asked timidly. "Sure, let's go." And with that, Sam and Jack stepped over the threshold into the small house. Liam plopped down on the sofa and motioned for Jack to sit down next to him and take a controller. Sam and George sat on the other sofa and conversed quietly, while Jack and Sam bonded over the Xbox. After about an hour, George got up and asked, "Who wants a coffee?" "Yes, please," replied both Jack and Sam. "Can I have juice, please, Dad?" asked Liam. "Sure. I'm just going to hop over to Starbucks, get some good coffee in. I'll be right back, okay?" said George. "Sure, we're good here, aren't we, Liam?" said Jack. "Yep," said Liam, happily going back to the Xbox. They carried on playing until suddenly there was a loud crash from near the kitchen area. Both Sam and Jack stood up quickly, looking worried. Jack motioned them both to be quiet. He moved quietly towards the kitchen, when suddenly they were completely surrounded. Liam ran to Jack and held him tight while the men looked on menacingly. Then the front door opened, and the large man walked towards them, his men letting him through. "Hello, Jack. Long time no see," said Director Vine, when he finally got in front of them. "Hello, Vine. I can't say I'm glad to see you," replied Jack in a dangerous voice. "I can imagine you aren't. And look, is this your son?" End of chapter 3.